All righty. Yes, indeed. Another week here on College Sports Rush YouTube channel. It's live 4 days a week. Today, 4 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm sorry, today, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's correct. So we got it all for you over here at the College Sports Rush. 4 straight days of college football picks and analysis. Let's get right to it. Jimmy out along with Paul Stone here on a Tuesday in the College Sports Rush channel. Today, we look at the high profile, the bigger matchups, the ones that we expect to generate the most handle at Bet Rivers. Go to South Bend. Notre Dame, after their tough loss, came all the way back and tied it up, and then Carson Beck led the Hurricanes to a game-winning field goal, and they knock it down to win that Sunday night standalone game Labor Day weekend. So A&M took care of Utah State as well, so 2-0, a couple of layups there. Marcel Reed looks to be improved. He's got a chance, but we have to see against some stiffer competition, in which we will see in this game on Saturday. Notre Dame, again, with their first-year starter. Rough start for Carr, the quarterback, but I like the way he finished. I like the way he competed. He finished strong, and so maybe something to build on. That's a tough spot for a young quarterback to make their first road start in a hostile environment. At Bet Rivers, the number is 7.50.5. The Irish are favored over A&M, Paul, where they wore them out on the road. So a little revenge factor here for the Aggies going to South Bend.
Yeah, I tell you, a great game here in week 3, Jimmy. I'm looking at the Notre Dame Fighting Irish here. You look at how they come into this game, and it's off a loss, off a bye, and on the ropes as far as their playoff hopes go. You know, I absolutely love this spot for Notre Dame after dropping their season opener at Miami 27-24. The Irish can obviously ill afford to start the season 0-2. If they indeed wish to make a repeat trip to the 12-team playoff. You know, there are several reasons that I like Notre Dame against the Aggies Saturday in South Bend. First of all, you mentioned redshirt freshman quarterback C.J. Carr. He's going to be making his second career start, and he really did close strong against Miami. He rallied the Irish from that 2-touchdown deficit. I looked at the statistics only in the game's final 20 minutes. And obviously, I'll concede Miami's defense with the 2-touchdown lead in the beginning of this stretch, maybe playing a little soft. But in the final 20 minutes, C.J. Carr, 10 of 14 for 159 yards and a touchdown, also an interception. And he also did some work with his legs, 5 carries for 36 yards, including that 7-yard touchdown run. So C.J. Carr finished his first career start against Miami much better than he started. Notre Dame, they still have one of the nation's top running back tandems in Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Last year, that duo rushed for almost 1,900 yards. They get to go against a Texas A&M defense that allowed 201 rushing yards against Texas San Antonio in their season opener. The Roadrunners averaged a robust 6.2 yards per carry against the Aggies. I think Notre Dame is going to be able to run the ball against the Aggies. Additionally, a small sample size, but the last 2 years, off a straight-up loss, Notre Dame 4-0 against the spread. Also, as a home favorite during that same 2-year span, Notre Dame 8-4 against the spread. You know, I like this Texas A&M team. I think I've talked about that on this program more than once, but I just believe this situation favors a Notre Dame team clearly backed into a corner. They're coming off a bye. They had a bye after their opener against Miami, so they've had 2 weeks to reflect on that loss to Miami, and also to get C.J. Carr some repetitions, some more training, so forth and so on. I just like the spot for Notre Dame. Give me Notre Dame -7. They defeat the Aggies by double digits.
Log into your Bet Rivers app or your betrivers.com account each week to opt into a 3-pack of NCAA football profit boosts, including a live boost, a same-game parlay boost, and a boost to use however you please. See the app or website for more details. So next one is, we don't really have a side on this one, but we want to break it down for you a little bit, and that is Clemson at Georgia Tech. Clemson 3.5 and 54 in Atlanta. This line opened up a little bit higher than that and has been bet down, but Clemson, and boy, you're talking about a residual effect from their home loss opening weekend at against LSU, down 16-0 late in the first half. Clemson gets a field goal before half, And then they scored 24 more unanswered in the second half. 17-0 in the third to take they secured the lead before the end of the third quarter. So what do we look at more? A lot of people just alarm. No, Clemson's done. They're not that good. This, that, or they scored 27 straight when they were down 16-0. Now, Troy did have more penalties and more turnovers, so that helped the Clemson comeback as well. But all of this, the returning players that accomplished a lot last year and adding some players as well. They may have found their running back is a fifth-year senior, a redshirt senior who they leaned on and gave it to him over 20 times against Troy in that comeback. So maybe they have settled in on that guy as a running back. But in Georgia Tech, they sat Haynes King after the win on Friday night for that 5-day Labor Day weekend, that road win, gutsy win at Colorado after they turned the ball over 3 times in their first 10 snaps or so. Dug themselves a big hole. But Haynes King, we love his toughness. We talk about it all the time, but man, he took a beating against Colorado. If it was Clemson, I'm sure he could have played against Gardner Webb. But I'm just wondering about how much wear and tear. He missed some time last year because he took a beating and because of injury. Shading it anyway. I'm almost leaning toward Clemson. I'll give a lean toward Clemson. It's not one of my official releases this week, but I'll give him a pass a little bit for the ugly first half. But it seems like a lot of people have given up on his Clemson team. And one thing that Dabo Swinney, you can't argue with, they've lost some games and they were out of maybe playoff contention or national title hopes, and he still has kept them playing for pride. They have way more than pride left on the table. But I'm just saying, I think they have too much in place to fall. Tough place to play on campus in downtown Atlanta against the Yellow Jackets, Paul.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's 3 sides to handicapping a football game, in my opinion. And 2 of those sides are the 2 teams competing. You can pick one team or the other. And then the third element is the number or the point spread. And I think as handicappers, we so often just get kind of married to which side we like. And we certainly consider the number, but we don't consider it nearly at the same level as we do the side we like. In the early all-season look-ahead markets, Clemson was favored by 7.5 points in this game, and now it's down to 3.5. So I think, like you, I mean, if I was going to play this game, and I haven't as of yet, and very well might not, but I would lean towards Clemson because I think the number favors the Tigers. We've seen them twice. They haven't looked good the last 2 quarters against LSU. The first 2 against Troy on Saturday. That was a pretty tough 60 minutes of football for the Tigers. But I think, it's kind of one of those situations where you buy high, low, sell high type thing. And I think Clemson, you're getting them at a bargain here if you choose to go with the Tigers. And in this series, and again, history doesn't make a ton of difference in the handicap, but I think you at least have to look at it. Clemson's won 9 straight over Georgia Tech, 7-1-1 against the spread during that 9-game stretch.
Don't forget, again, this is the first of 4 days this week at 4 p.m. Eastern, college football picks and analysis tomorrow and Friday, the 10, with Doug Kazarian, Greg Waddell, and Troy Macker. That's 4 straight days this week, starting today, live at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel. All right, we're split on this one. You've got one side, and I've got the other going head up on this one in a battle in the Southeastern Conference. The Georgia Bulldogs travel to Knoxville to Rocky Top, take on Tennessee. This line opened up around a touchdown. At Bet Rivers currently, it is 3.5 and 49.5. So sharp action coming in on Tennessee. And that's where I think, well, Paul, I should listen to you because it's dampened my spirits because I really like that 6.5 and 7, 3.5. Obviously, a softer stance, but I still like Tennessee to win the game. Georgia, Stockton, he's gutsy, but I just think there's some throwing limitations when it comes to the Georgia passing game. He has the 3rd lowest QBR in the Southeastern Conference out of the 16 starting quarterbacks. 28 points versus Austin Peay. I mean, we don't want to go crazy too much. Certainly, we don't want to overemphasize when they're piling up statistics like Oregon, what they're doing right now against weaker competition. Is that going to translate when they go to Happy Valley to play Penn State or some other teams like that? But I do get a little bit more alarmed when they struggle against weaker competition, like Georgia did against Austin Peay. What their offense has done. On the other side, Tennessee. I'm a little concerned of watching Syracuse struggle against UConn. They were fortunate to win the game in the Carrier Dome. UConn matched up, and if you had 6.5 or even 7 a push, that was a tough beat in that one. But Joey Aguilar, the transfer and former Appalachian State quarterback, the thing I see that brings it back, he's not Hendon Hooker, but they can run their offense. That they want to make you defend sideline to sideline. They want you to defend, 40 yards down the field. They throw it to all areas of the field. That's what Heupel wants to do, and that's what he did when he first came on the scene in Knoxville. With Hendon Hooker, Milton, and Nico. No, man, those guys are athletes just trying to play quarterback. But Aguilar and he could do it with his legs a little bit. So 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, over 9 yards an attempt, 117 points in 2 games. Seems like the explosive elements of this Tennessee offense is back on the road. And I just wonder how long we've gotten a little bit custom, Paul. And I know you got the other side, so you'll certainly have more than your fair share to say. But Georgia's roster has been elite. I mean, the best of the best for so long. And I mean, that's just hard to maintain. I don't care who you are. And some of those defensive linemen and some of those defense, it's just tough. They are very good, and they have a very good roster. And Kirby knows how to put together a roster, even the old school way or the transfer portal NIL way. He has no problems as far as that's concerned. But I just wonder if it's just a tick off, a little bit off. So they were blindsided last year. They lost their starting quarterback in the SEC championship game. Texas kind of caught them by surprise with Stockton wanting to trust his legs more than his arm. Texas was prepared for it. I'm sorry, Notre Dame was prepared for it, and you saw what happened there. But I'm taking home points in this with Tennessee, and I don't know who's better this year between Tennessee and Georgia. These big-time SEC matchups, I love the home team usually. Not as much as I did at the opening line, but I still like them plus 3.5. Paul, you're on the other side.
Yeah, make no mistake about it. Virtually everyone had the Georgia Bulldogs ranked in their preseason top 5. But I agree with you, Jimmy. Make no mistake about this point either. After a pair of mostly uninspiring victories over featherweights Marshall and Austin Peay, the Bulldogs, they've looked like anything but a viable national championship contender to this point. So I really believe I agree with a lot of what you've said. Gunnar Stockton clearly has limitations in the passing game. He's gritty. He's tough. He can run the ball. But they're not going to score, they're not going to average 42 points a game this year against a mostly SEC schedule with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback. And that includes as well the weapons that he has around him on offense. This past weekend, Georgia managed just 28 points against Austin Peay, averaged less than 5 yards a carry against the Governors. You need to average more yards per carry in the running game against an FCS team of that caliber. And last year, just to kind of tell you who Austin Peay was in their opening game last year against Louisville, they got beat 62-0 and gave up 571 yards. So they hardly tackled the Cardinals last year, and Georgia didn't even reach 30 against them. So Georgia certainly has been limited offensively without question. You mentioned, I think, the look-ahead line in this game, Georgia-Tennessee matchup. 7.5. It's been above a touchdown for most of the summer. Currently sits at 3.5. The market, as you mentioned, has jumped on board with Tennessee. Their enthusiasm for Kirby Smart and the Dogs has obviously waned somewhat. But sometimes when the market bobs, I weave. And this is one of those cases here. I'm siding with the Georgia team that few others are looking to support. And why am I doing that? Again, history doesn't make a huge amount of difference in the handicap, but it is a little bit a small piece of the handicap. Georgia's won 8 straight in this series. They've dominated Tennessee in recent years. They've covered 6 straight games in this series. But more importantly, you mentioned Joey Aguilar. I think Georgia gets after Tennessee quarterback Joey Aguilar, who is had a turnover problem throughout his career at Appalachian State. His 2 seasons there as a starter, he threw 24 interceptions, had 51 turnover-worthy plays according to Pro Football Focus, had a turnover-worthy play rate according to Pro Football Focus of 5.4% last season, which was the third worst among the 14 Sun Belt Conference quarterbacks. To be fair, in the spirit of full disclosure, he had 26 what Pro Football Focus calls big time throws, and that ranked first in the Sun Belt. So what that tells me, and we both watched him play, he's got that gunslinger's mentality. He's got an arm, and like you mentioned, he's got legs too. He's got an arm. He believes in it. Sometimes he gets it in there, and sometimes maybe he doesn't. And I think Georgia, even though they don't have the great defense, they have a great defense, but certainly not to the level of some of the glory years in the recent past. They still have blue chip caliber athletes there on the front seven. I think they're going to put him in harm's way. I think Georgia's going to win the turnover battle. Syracuse and East Tennessee State, they don't play great defense. They're not going to expose Aguilar's turnover tendencies. I think Georgia will. On top of that, Tennessee will be playing without its top 2 cornerbacks. Jermod McCoy, he got hurt in January working out near his East Texas home. He hasn't played this season. No news on when he will play. He's projected as a top 10 pick in the draft in April. And then their other cornerback, Ricky Gibson, who also started last year, he's also going to miss the Georgia game. So they're without their top 2 cornerbacks. They'll be starting a sophomore and a true freshman. So there will be some drop off there. Since 2016, Tennessee only 6-13 against the spread as a home dog. But again, in the spirit of full disclosure, this is kind of a wash because the last 2 years, Georgia only 1-6 against the spread as an away favorite. But I think Georgia's the better team. I'm looking more at the point spread here. I think it just got too cheap. I had to jump on the dogs. I like Georgia minus 3.5 over Tennessee. And one of us is going to have a winner.
Yes, one of us did you look up any turnover worthy plays this year? Because Aguilar has not thrown an interception.
He's not thrown an interception. And I don't have, I didn't look at that really because of the, and he does have obviously has better players around him and that type of thing. So the supporting cast could make a lot of difference. He might own, if he throws 5 interceptions this year in a complete SEC season, then my take on this game was obviously off the mark. But I think he forces some throws. I think I saw Georgia last year. They didn't look nearly as average as they've looked in the first 2 games this year. But going into that Texas game in Austin, the regular season meeting, they really didn't look as good as Texas. But when they got in Austin, man, they hit a different gear. Yes. And Arch Manning got in that game, and he didn't know what was going on. They were all over him. And certainly they don't have those kind of top 5 draft picks, I don't believe, at least veteran players in that front 7, but they're still above average Georgia Bulldog type players. Kirby's going to be insane, I'm sure, getting the dogs ready to play. Then on the other side, you got Josh Heupel. You talked about, Aguilar and what he's done so far this year. Certainly Heupel has a reputation of a quarterback whisperer. So whatever Aguilar's best is, he very well might get it out of him. So it'll be interesting not only to see Aguilar's performance against a outstanding defense like Georgia's this week, but to see how he plays throughout the 2025 season.
Yeah, a couple of things that you touched on as far as the gunslinger. There's no doubt he's firing it. I mean, he's throwing it. I mean, he's taking his shots. And so far, I mean, in the misses this year, early this season, and I'm focused a little bit more on Syracuse because they provide a little bit more resistance than last week's opponent, but they were just kind of just wildly, inaccurate, and but it didn't come, no turnover worthy plays that I saw in that Syracuse game. But he is in a system that is quarterback friendly now, and he certainly throws the ball better than Nico and also Joe Milton. Not as good as Hooker. But as far as the competition, I would say his supporting cast at Appalachian State was, in what they were playing, similar with Tennessee, is what their schedule is. So, but, quarterbacks should get better with reps, with experience. So he's got a lot of that. So it just seems like it's a little bit more comfortable fit. And the other thing about Georgia, about these run-wins when they could be a little bit sleepy, yeah, we got a fact, and Max brought it up to my attention today, our producer. Kirby Smart in games they're favored by 34 or more. 0-14-1 against the spread. So they've been pretty damn good, right? But he just doesn't beat up on those. Saban used to be known as a guy to, call the dogs off late in those lopsided matchups. Kirby, they just take a nap, I guess, when they go into those games. So that's not part of. I thought that Georgia's roster was going to be a little tick off this year entering the season. Their schedule, they had to go on the road last year to Oxford, Austin, in Tuscaloosa. Well, they all go back to Athens this year. So, and the schedule is really going to be tough to keep them out of the college football playoff. Players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or college football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning standard Squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See the app and website for more details. Let's move on. Talk about another. Stay in the SEC. LSU and Florida. LSU is 7.5, 48.5 right now at Bet Rivers. Seen as high as a 9 and some 9.5s at one point. The look ahead was 7 last week. LSU, an exhale spot after their big win. Besides the home win against Alabama, Brian Kelly's first year, maybe as equal, because maybe this might lead to some bigger things down the road as in addition to just a SEC championship game appearance. Anyway, they against Louisiana Tech, we expected a letdown spot. Never talked to a former coach or player that said that we got 100% intensity focus in hunger every game. So those exhale spots are legitimate, but I didn't expect this LSU offense to struggle as much as they did against Louisiana Tech. Nussmeier, as good as he is, and this is the explosive element of LSU's passing game. They have some real playmakers at wide receiver. They can get vertical. But what LSU is facing already in both the Clemson and Louisiana Tech game is the soft umbrella type of cushion type of coverages. And they are just forcing LSU to check it down. And that has resulted in just 5.9 yards an attempt for Garrett Nussmeier through 2 games. Florida, Sunbelt Billy, well, we don't have to tell you about that. Well, maybe some voters on the West Coast should be informed of how big of a deal that was. But who better than to handle this situation? Brutal schedule coming up, and they don't look good. And I was really impressed, midseason when they were really disappointing against that brutal schedule, and they ripped off the LSU win, the Ole Miss win, and competitive. And if Lagway doesn't go down against Georgia and Jacksonville, do they hold on for that one? Maybe so. They had the lead in that one. But the other thing is also the total in this one, and that's where you want to come in, Paul, and that is the total is at 48.5 right now. Opened up at 52. Both of these teams combined are 3-0 to the under in these one. We talked about that one, my best play on the opening week, LSU under. That one, they're much better on defense, and they are. LSU's starting defense has only given up 10 points in 2 games combined. The last of the 7 came completely against backups for Louisiana Tech last week. But Florida is not really killing it on offense. LSU, not so much. They're facing those soft coverages. That eats up some clock with some underneath throws. You like the total in this one at 48.5.
Yeah, I do, Jimmy. Entering the season, I really liked LSU's defensive additions through the portal and thought it would be much improved on that side of the ball. And through its first 2 games, the wins over Clemson and Louisiana Tech, as you mentioned, the Tigers have probably even exceeded my expectations for that defense. They've allowed a total of just 17 points, an average of just 207.5 yards per game, and only 3.6 yards per play. So holdovers like Harold Perkins Jr. and newcomers like Mansour Delane, the cornerback from Virginia Tech, and company are certainly developing a reputation in my mind for having one of the nation's top defenses. Offensively, obviously LSU returned their standout quarterback, Garrett Nussmeier, but they were having to replace a pair of outstanding tackles, and that included Will Campbell, the other being Emory Jones, but Will Campbell, the 4th overall pick in this past April's NFL draft at left tackle. So those are some big losses. And Louisiana Tech, they had 3 sacks and 8 tackles for loss against LSU. You really don't expect that. Of course, those sacks are factored into rushing yardage in college football, but the Tigers currently having trouble running the ball. They're averaging just 118 yards per game rushing, only 3.6 yards per carry. And then you look at this Florida team. I know some people have brought up the fact that DJ Lagway's lack of repetitions during preseason workouts has perhaps affected his timing and his performance in the first 2 games, and that's certainly a viable theory. That might be the case, but after being just stunned in the swamp, one of their worst losses in recent history by in-state South Florida, 18-16 this past Saturday on the last second final play of the game, actually, field goal, lost that game 18-16. The Florida Gators obviously need to bounce back in the worst way. And if they're going to take LSU into the fourth quarter, if they're going to have a chance to beat LSU, the Gators are going to likely have to do it with their defense. Dating back to late last season, Florida, they've allowed an average of just 11.6 points per game over their last 6 games. All of those last 6 games have gone under the total. I expect for points, again, to be at a premium in Death Valley there in Baton Rouge. Florida's going to have to do it with defense. I think this is going to be a defensive struggle or masterpiece, depending on your viewpoint there. But I like Florida and LSU to remain under the total of 48.5.
I'll definitely, if I'm playing it, I'm playing the under as well for both of the reasons that we talked about. But the odds makers are catching up, with their numbers, and that's why I liked it so much. And listen, I knew LSU's defense was improved. I didn't know it would be this good. And what we're seeing is that secondary, they really trust their secondary. Against Clemson, I mean, an experienced, good quarterback, they blitzed 2/3 of the snaps. You're not doing that unless you trust those guys in the back end. And we talked about all the guys that transfer, but I'll give you credit, Paul. You were impressed with number 4, Mansour Delane, who came over from Virginia Tech, and he's the star of that group. There is no doubt. So I mean, it's a little bit of DBU coming back, but he's really, really good. And that secondary, they trust him. So you can do a lot of fun things as a defensive coordinator. You can blitz from all over, bring extra guys, and do all kinds of fun stuff. And when you trust those guys on the back end, let's move on to outside of the SEC now, and let's go to the Little Darlings. Nobody in college football has 2 wins against ranked teams at the time. Well, they're not ranked anymore. They sent a pack in the South Florida Bulls, and that young coach down in Tampa. We knew that he had put together a pretty good roster. He was getting some kids, but we didn't know it'd be quite this good. You watching the South Florida and Florida game, Florida didn't, although they had 13 penalties, including the 15-yard spitting penalty on the game-winning field goal drive for South Florida. It wasn't, yards were tough for both teams. There was a competitive matchup, no question. But how much can you follow up a big win and a big win again? And now the public is on your side. Public dog is alive here. That's right. The public is on the side of South Florida. Miami is up to 17.5 and 56 against South Florida. If this was coming off of a bye, but I would take those points. But man, where is the exhale spot for the South Florida Bulls? And that concerns me a lot. Yes, they better be excited. They deserve to be beating Big Brother from the SEC in their home state. So this is not one that we have an official release, either of us, but it's an interesting line, to say the least. It's a rare public dog with a big line in college football.
Yeah, I'll tell you, South Florida opens the season at home against Tulane as a 5.5-point home underdog against Boise State, rather. They defeat the Broncos outright, win that game, and then back it up by going to Florida as a 17.5-point underdog. So they've won back-to-back games as the betting underdog, and now in their 3rd game, they're not only a betting underdog, but getting a robust 17.5 points at Miami. I emailed a friend of mine who has access to a database and was going to get him to run a query for purposes of this appearance to see how do teams, you have to kind of style it and create some parameters and write the language. But I was wondering, how does a team, and there's not that many examples, obviously, but how does a team in South Florida's position, having won back-to-back games as an underdog of 5.5 and then 17.5, how do they perform the next week if they're again an underdog by over 2 touchdowns? I think that would be very interesting, and I'll try to share that maybe on Thursday if he gets back with me. But I'm like you. I mean, I think the public, it's going to be hard for the Joes to resist playing South Florida because they pulled these 2 upsets. And Alex Golish's team, they could be a team on a mission. I mean, he's got them believing they're playing at a high level. And I tell you, their quarterback, Byron Brown, I mean, he is a dual threat guy. He is a load, a big guy. He can run the football. He's had injury problems throughout his career. But, man, if he stays healthy, South Florida obviously is starting to make some group of 5 noise for that playoff spot. And should they go into Hard Rock Stadium and defeat Miami, they would have another feather in their cap. This is probably going to be one that I'm going to stay away from, but I'm not going to get in front of South Florida. I'm not going to get in front of a runaway train or a runaway pack of bulls for that matter. So probably going to be a pass for me.
There you go. All right. I know one thing. Miami, you have Miami's attention now, though. I mean, they're not sneaking up on anybody anymore, and so that's one thing. I like to call it the court rush fade or the field rush fade the week after in the emotional win, but they couldn't tear down the opponent's goalposts in this one. So, but it's a big deal. And Golish and this Bulls team. He's starting to get a lot of people's attention, especially in a week where we didn't have a ton of great matchups in college football. This one clearly stole the spotlight and got a lot of people's attention. And the athletic director of Florida just got an extension. So he will be making the next hire if there is one. So Sunbelt Billy making his return back to the state of Louisiana in that one after the loss to South Florida. Vanderbilt and South Carolina. So I was looking at the Heisman odds at Bet Rivers, and Lenora Sellers is like co-fifth choice at 20-1. And Diego Pavia is at 150-1. Now, part of the Heisman award is a team award. When RG3 won it with 3 losses, Jaden Daniels won it with 3 losses. Those are rare. You really got to be sort of a top 10 team. It's sort of a team award first. Sometimes the best player on the best team, and what has become sort of the quarterback of the best team as well. Gino Torretta comes to mind when we talk about some guys historically who have won it, who were not nearly the best player in college football. But look at their numbers and their comparisons. Keep in mind, both teams have played Arena Win and Virginia Tech. South Carolina played Virginia Tech at a neutral site in Atlanta. Vanderbilt played Virginia Tech in Blacksburg in Lane Stadium. Pavia has more passing yards. He has more passing TDs. He has more rushing yards. Sellers does have 1 rushing TD. Pavia does not. So what am I missing here? That where the one guy's 20-1 and one guy's 150-1. They play the same schedule. If anything, tougher to go to Virginia Tech's place to play. It's that maybe because Vanderbilt. They're nice little story. Clark Lee, it's good, it's fine, but damn it, I've always said too, when you're really at a not so great program, a not so great team, and you stand out. And this other thing is that Diego Pavia is lifting this team. They're trying to capitalize on it right now. They're trying to spend some money. Is it Vanderbilt when they just refused for so many years? So going to South Carolina, it's a tough place to play. Granted, I don't like taking road teams in these type of SEC games. I get that. But, man, Pavia could be playing in Nashville, in Columbia, or on the damn moon. My man is not fazed by anything. He is something. He's got that stuff. And listening to his teammates talk about it, that's our guy. That's our leader. In SEC media days, they just rally around him. I think it's a lot of fun. I love Sellers. I think he's a great high-quality character guy as well. I just don't think he's improved any as a passer. And that's what I want to see early in a quarterback. If they take that next step, we know he can run like the wind. Probably the most feared runner in college football as a quarterback. 240 pounds. He could run like that. Who could finish his runs. He's powerful. I mean, he's Anthony Richardson just a tick off of Anthony Richardson as far as X concerned. But man, some of his throws have been way too hot, really not having a lot of touch, and that affects your accuracy. And I just don't know if he's improved that part of playing the quarterback position. So with all that being said, Poppy is averaging 11 yards an attempt, and we know he could do things within the rhythm and also off schedule as well as improvisational. He's a poor man's Johnny Football. I'm taking the points here, plus 44.5 with Diego Pavia. And maybe I got my hand slapped by having Virginia Tech against him last week. But this guy is something special, man. And I think he's with all the attention he's got, I think he's still underrated, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, Diego Pavia has been one of the best stories was the best story maybe last year in all of college football in 2024. The upset of Alabama is a 21 point or so underdog, and then he just carried it into this year. I mean, the guy has got so much spirit. He's got such a persona. He's what makes college football fun, and especially when he's able to come in there and elevate a program like Vanderbilt that's been at such a competitive historical disadvantage there in the Southeastern Conference for so many years. So he's a great guy to have in college football. This particular game, I made it 7.5. South Carolina favored by 7.5. It opened at some books on Sunday at 7. And much like you, the market, excited about Vanderbilt. It's been bet down to 5.5. But I look at last year, and I know this is this year and not last year, but last year in Vanderbilt's 4 SEC road games, they played at Missouri, at Kentucky, at Auburn, and at LSU. They got 7.5 points or more in all 4 of those. Now they're only getting 5.5. The market did adjust this number down from the opener, but they're only getting 5.5 now. So I think you're paying kind of a Diego Pavia tax.
Okay.
I don't know that that's the natural number, so to speak, and maybe he's worth it. But that kind of is what's going to have me on the sidelines here. If it was 7 or more, I think I would take Vanderbilt because they've been so good as an underdog the last couple of years with Pavia, engineering the attack and spearheading all the enthusiasm. But at 5.5, again, I talked earlier about the significance of the number versus the side. I think here the numbers just gotten away from us a little bit, and the values maybe been sucked out of it, paying too much of a premium to back Diego Pavia. I'll be pulling for you because I like Vanderbilt, but I'm going to be on the sideline.
And I know comparative scores will get us in trouble. You can't correlate them, but it's hard not to see. Wait, they just played the same game, the same team the last 2 weeks. And those were different games. And we don't want to overreact to ugly offensive football in week 1 and things like that. But I don't know. And that's, and when we did the SEC preview, that's why I picked South Carolina under their win total this year. They don't have those guys up front, man. So that they did last year. They were really good defensively last year, and it allowed to kind of the developmental to sort of inconsistencies of Lenora Sellers last year. So we do it each and every day this week. That today is the first of 4 days, 4 p.m. Eastern, live College Sports Rush YouTube channel with college football picks and analysis. Paul and I will be back on Thursday for our best bets. And then, of course, the guys at the 10, Doug Kazarian, Greg Waddell, and Troy Macker tomorrow and Friday. So today is the first of 4 live college football pick shows right here in the College Sports Rush YouTube channel. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott.